So I just logged in and I've been messaged quite a few times and asked what do I think about the upcoming Blaze Wizard changes, and that's why I would like to take this week's video as the opportunity to address the upcoming changes, right? And why don't we just do a couple of dailies here together while I go over the changes. As always, Max from the Orange Mushroom blog did an amazing job summarizing all the changes from this patch, and Blaze Wizard wasn't the only class that was significantly changed, right? Overall, the direction that Maplestory is moving in is away from the bind and burst meta, but you know, in the end we're still gonna be binding and bursting, right? But the major burst multiplication and stacking will be, you know, nerfed, I would say. Yeah, nerfed in the future, which means that also, you know, solo play might become a little bit more viable, because obviously Nexon needs to address these, you know, these needs by buffing the general character strength a bit. So I think this is probably a really good change for solo bossing in general, right? Some classes also didn't really get touched at all, so for them it's kind of meh, right? So we're gonna see. Overall, we're gonna see. The other, you know, especially impactful thing for me right here is, with this change, the elemental reduction modifier was basically removed from the game. So if you don't know how it works in the current meta, in party bossing you always want to have a bishop, then you would always want to have a canna, and then you would always want to have a support character that reduces the elemental resistance of the enemy. The bishop and canna give an amazing burst buff to everybody, while the elemental reduction is currently applied with 100% uptime and basically serves as a 10% final damage multiplier. And the classes that can provide this certain multiplier are Blaze Wizard, Dawn Warrior, and Battle Mage. And out of these, I think Battle Mage is probably the best at doing this specific job right now. Although you could say that Blaze Wizard is the best in 2-minute parties, because, you know, we are natively a 2-minute class, but we can flex really well into 3-minute parties, which is a feature that I absolutely love about this class, 100%. But yeah, I would still say, you know, Battle Mage is more like a 90-minute class, so they could kind of flex into 2-minute spots as well. So out of these three, honestly, Dawnwear, Battle Mage, and Blaze Wizard all are pretty good and really high value pickups right now for party play, because they provide this basically 100% uptime, 10% final damage buff through the elemental damage reduction multiplier, right? On top of that, I think Dawnwear gives ID. Blaze Wizard would give 60% final damage or 61% final damage through Burning Conduit right here. If you're standing on this platform, you get, you know, the bonus, while Blaze Wizards get it permanently. So you can see right here, Burning Conduit is applied to me even though I'm not standing in the field. For my party mates, it would not work like that. They would need to stand in the field. So depending on the boss, it's useful or not, right? In Saren, it could be probably not as useful, right? Because she dashes left and right, but, you know, maybe you can find a proper placement there. Not too sure. Probably, you know, if you imagine what's probably the worst application for Burning Conduit, it's probably Carling Bird, right? The bird moves around a lot, so can't be bound, you know, without origin. So you probably don't really get a lot out of this skill. So anyways, from that, Blaze Wizard does overall support the party with, you know, final damage, or damage and elemental reduction better than a Dawn Warrior, for example, because of Burning Conduit right here, this field, right? And Battle Mage, I think, does it even better, but honestly, I'm not too well versed in the Battle Mage universe, right? And yeah, that's basically the baseline knowledge that you would need to understand what's happening in the game. Just to repeat again, they are removing this elemental reduction final damage multiplier entirely, so that means that the parties are, probably gonna do 10% less damage through that, but of course, this patch also compensated in a lot of other areas, right? And that's why I want to talk about the Blaze Wizard changes, because Blaze Wizard was one of the classes that was actually significantly adjusted, right? Let's put it like that. So, to go into the discussion, let's not look at Blaze Wizard at all, right? Let's look at a class like Dawn Warrior, right? They applied the elemental reduction through a skill called True Sight. That was an active skill that they had to use in order to debuff the boss. And as soon as the debuff, was applied, everybody did more damage to the boss, right? Besides the elemental reduction, I think it also gives ID, but I could be wrong on that. I'm not 100% sure. So, after the patch goes live, right? Or, also, just to get this out of the way, right? Right now, at the moment of recording, this is in the KMST server, right? In the test server of in the test server of Korean Maplestory, right? So things could be adjusted, and usually I wouldn't really be talking about it, but the thing that most of the time do get adjusted are the numbers, but not the general changes, right? From this, it's quite obvious that they are gonna remove the elemental reduction. Okay, anyways, back to Dawn Warrior. Dawn Warrior? Yes. They keep True Sight as a skill that they press in order to debuff the boss, right? But it loses the elemental reduction for the party, basically, but they keep the damage that they would gain through the elemental reduction on the skill. But the party utility is taken away entirely, right? But they keep, it's really important to make this distinction, they keep this damage for themselves. Now, if we look to Blaze Wizard, it does not work like that anymore, right? Currently, Blaze Wizard works like that, right? We have two modes that we could be in, right? Right now you see this lion right here, behind the spider, come on, give me some space. There we go, behind the auto steal familiar, there we go, there's my lion, right? I'm in lion mode right now. If I were to summon the fox, now I'm in fox mode. And now my main attack does work differently, right? It does not return to me anymore. But what it now does is that it applies the elemental reduction debuff to whatever enemy I'm hitting. And that feature was taken away in the KMST patch, right? But unlike Dawn Warrior, we don't get to keep the damage that we basically gain from the elemental reduction, right? We don't get to keep that damage. But it's not horrible right now. It's not, I don't even think it's bad. Let me get that straight. The math, etc. needs to get done by people who, actually know how to do it, etc. Someone that's not me, 100%, right? So, how they've done it is that they changed this skill right here, Blazing Extinction. Right now, even though, we have the mobbing mode and the bossing mode, this skill is unchanged no matter what, right? I just cast it, and it's the slow moving fireball that I often use to mob with Soul Janus. Because, it's out for so long and it triggers Soul Janus over and over again, which is absolutely fantastic, right? But this skill right here gets a bossing mode, basically. And instead of, 5 seconds of cooldown, this skill is gonna have 30 seconds of cooldown. And it's basically a big nuke button that you press every 30 seconds. And 30 seconds is kind of significant because if you can make this work, you can basically fire off this nuke with Fatal Strike every time, which honestly might not be bad. It might be difficult to pull off, right? But, I don't hate a high skill ceiling on my class. No, I don't hate it at all, actually. Right? And overall, this is the most significant thing that's gonna change. And I think I am fine with this change. I'm fine with it. But I am not a fan. And let's get into that, right? With Nexon basically announcing that they are moving away from the final damage stacking meta, it basically means we get closer to other MMOs right now, right? If I imagine a game like Elder Scrolls Online, which I also played for a bit, there is party utility stacking, but it's really, really minor, right? If I remember correctly, not all classes have 100% crit rate, right? And even though you don't have, 100% crit rate, there might be like one class that gives 10% crit damage to you or something like that. I'm not really sure anymore, but what I do remember is that all the buffs that you could give to each other were kind of permanent and they weren't really super significant, right? So that basically means that now that we nerfed Benediction and we took away a lot of party support from the game and or made it weaker, right? We are moving into that direction where the party building process is not as strict anymore, which I think is, great for Nexon because they do solve a lot of problems through that, since the class balancing as it is right now is it's really, really bad, right? Even compared to other MMOs where, problems exist, etc. The class balancing as it is right now in Maplestory is really, really horrendous. And on top of that, we play in the reboot server, which is extra weak. So, which is, it's just a no-go right now because, the weaker classes, even though, you might be full build basically, right? You're done with the game, cannot participate in the newest content that is released because they picked the wrong class 4 years ago when they started the game, right? And that's something that really shouldn't exist. And I think with the upcoming balance changes, if they keep their direction, problems like these are easier for Nexon to mitigate. That being said, I am not Nexon, right? I'm a player, and for me personally, I switched to Blaze Wizard or picked up Blaze Wizard as a main because I wanted to be that useful party member, right? Which I can still be now, right? Until the elemental reduction is removed. But even after it's removed, I still get to keep burning conduit, right? You might ask. And I might still provide 61% final damage, right? But that's actually, not final damage, just, flat damage percent. But that skill was also nerfed, so the supporting capabilities of Blaze Wizard go down by a lot. Probably like, these are like ballpark numbers, right? But I think like from like 16-17% final damage to like 4%, something like that. So nerfed quite significantly, right? And even though we get this huge skill, Blazing Extinction, bossing mode, you know, however you would like to call it, right? Ah, man. The other reason why I picked Blaze Wizard is the pizza skill. And I don't mean Burning Conduit, right? For me, this is not the pizza skill. This is the pizza skill. And because this skill wasn't touched, and we lose the elemental damage reduction, right, in this patch, that basically means that the rest of the kit was nerfed by 10%. The origin was nerfed by 10%. My favorite skill was nerfed by 10%. That part is something that does rub me the wrong way, I must say. Because I do like these skills, and I would like to have these skills as powerful as they are right now, and not 10% weaker. And I think that's where the approach they took with Dawnwarrior, just to get back to that initial statement, was done in a more, you know, thoughtful manner, right? They didn't move the damage distribution from the kit around and just left it as is, but removed this thing that was, you know, something that is not compatible with the newest Nexon strategy, basically, right? I don't know how it is for Bum, because I have never played the class before, so I can't really talk on that. So yeah, that's basically my opinion. To summarize, I think, you know, I do understand, let's put it like that, why Nexon is moving in that direction. It's not necessarily bad, especially if you play a class that's not meta. I think it's really good. It's a really good sign for you in general that, you know, even though you might fall under the table in party building right now, there might be, you know, an opening for you soon, right? Because the binding bursting is not gonna be as required, especially, you know, if you look at, you know, the newest release boss like Limbo, right? The DPM is actually quite important in these bosses, right? So the classes like Kaiser, Thunderbreaker, you know, Wind Archer, they do eat really well in this patch, I must say, and it's amazing for them. But, you know, we are still in the summarization part here. For me personally, I'm not a fan overall, for the given reasons, right? I will see. I don't know right now if I will like the new skill, and I don't like to have the rest of the kit nerfed because of the introduction for the new skill. Besides that, there were some additional changes that I'm gonna get into right now, because, you know, I just want to have this video as complete as it can get, right? So let's go over the remaining changes right here. The first change is gonna be to Fire Walk right here. You can see it's just a skill that gives defense, speed, and jump. What it was changed about this, basically, the maximum speed was raised for Blaze Wizards, which is really, really interesting, right? I think right now all classes have a max speed of 140, and if I understood it correctly, we're gonna have a max speed of 160, which for Blaze Wizard specifically, I think makes sense, right? Because we don't have a teleport right now. We are a jump class, flash jump class, right? And the extra movement speed makes it that we can dodge certain patterns without having to be airborne to initiate, you know, a side movement, basically. Otherwise, you would always kind of want to be jumping, so you can quickly flash jump away, right? Because 50% of the time you're gonna be in the air, right? Makes it easier to dodge certain patterns. And with the extra movement speed, that might not be the case anymore, right? So I think overall it's a good change. It should probably also be coming to more classes, right? Because, you know, over half the cast is not a teleport class right now. I was always hoping for the Hexa's common skill dash. So all classes have a dash, right? But you know, the extra 20% of like 20 movement speed, however you would say it in this case, I don't know, are appreciated definitely. Next up, we have this skill right here, which is called Flashfire, I think? Flashfire, exactly. It is a back teleport. A back teleport. So I can place it, and I can, or return to it. Let's say it's a return teleport. I'm not 100% if the Maple community has an exact term for this type of skill, but it does exist outside of Blaze Wizard, because Marksman and Bowmaster both have this sort of skill, right? But what is gonna happen is that we are gonna be aligned, from my understanding of the skill at least, with Bowmaster and Marksman, because for them it does work differently. They place it down and you get, you know, similar to how I have it right here, a buff in your buff bar. But if you, or when you return to it, or rather if, right, because sometimes you just don't do it at all, right? But if you return to it, Blaze Wizard right now loses this buff and loses the summon, I would say, or, you know, the return point basically. And for Bowman and Marksman, they get to keep it for, I think, like 2 minutes, something like that. And we are also gonna be, you know, eating well in that change, because how it works out in practice, if you imagine, for example, we have Carlos tests, right, in phase 2. It is very much a comfortable situation. Let's kind of say, okay, this is the middle platform in Carlos, right? And I place down my TP, and since I have, you know, sort of limited movement options to, for example, get up here, right? The quickest way for me to get up here, if you imagine, we have the bubble, the golden bubble on the top right here. I would flash jump and hook jump. What is it called? Hook, rope lift. Oh my god. What was I thinking? Yeah, anyways, that would be the quickest way, right? And then once the, you know, the 5th chunk of the test finishes, I would return to my summon, and then I would jump to the next bubble, right? And for Bowmaster and Marksman, it's a little easier because I don't have to do this extra replacement step right here. And you would think, okay, how is that a big improvement right now? And the biggest point in that regard is this skill right here is not client-sided, it is server-sided. So you have to actually look for it to come out. And sometimes it doesn't come out. And especially in a test scenario where you would, you know, screw up your whole team, relying on this sort of teleport is not that great. So I hope that they also make the adjustment that this skill isn't server-sided anymore, right? But even if it is, not having to repress it once I teleport there is already gonna be a big improvement. Right there, for example, I did press the key, but it didn't come out. Maybe I pressed it a little too early, could be the case, to be honest, right? But with skills being client-sided, they feel a lot more responsive, and I'm sure a lot of Blaze Wizards have failed tests and colors because they thought they did place down the summon. So it's a great change. Besides that, we have this skill right here, Towering Inferno. This is basically just a small FMA, you know, let's put it like that. Yeah, I'll use it right now. Poof. Okay, this skill was not changed, if I remember correctly, but the bossing variant right here, you can see it is looking different, right? Towering Inferno, you see the lion, and now Towering Inferno, you see the fox. And in fox mode, it is not, you know, this like kind of small FMA. No, it is just, you know, a simple skill that doesn't feel impactful at all, but it does damage, right? So let's take a look here. Oof. this small poof does do quite a bit of damage, right? Right now how it works, if I attack a boss monster for a certain amount of time, I have the stacking debuff applied to them, and once the stacking debuff reaches 5 and I use the small poof right here, it does a good amount of damage. The change is that the cooldown of the skill will go down quicker. So right now it's 30 seconds, and with, you know, me hitting bosses after the changes, the skill will be reduced in cooldown, and I'll get to use it more often, especially, you know, during Phoenix Drive right here. This is a buff for myself that increases the number of orbs that I get to throw out. The cooldown will be reset, you know, quite a few times. So it's a pretty cool quality of life change, and something that is also kinda needed right now, because the skill cooldown right here and the debuff stacking system doesn't really, you know, feel too fleshed out. Let's put it like that. And yeah, I think, to be honest, that does it for the major changes, right? Another, like, summoning or summon, you know, this passive that, you know, flies out from time to time. Let me just resummon the guy. Here, pay close attention. There. Here, this is the guy. This is the fox. This is, you know, the salamander. This is the lion. And this is the salamander right here, right? And if I were to attack, this guy, you know, goes off and just mobs for me, right? But he also does damage to the bosses, so this guy does a little bit more damage. How much, you know, we're gonna see. We're gonna figure that out, right? And that basically does it for the Blaze Wizard changes. Overall, if this patch was an actual final damage improvement or not, it has to be figured out by other people, right? If you want to see some Korean Blaze Wizard content, I can also link you a channel in the description where you can take a look at the new animations, etc. And that should do it for this week's episode. This was week 95 of my Reboot Progression Series. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, members get early access to all my videos, and I'll see you next Thursday. Otherwise, take care everybody, and bye bye.